The lunch table was supposed to be calm, but the air was already thick with tension the moment Yandy sat down. Her sigh was heavy, her eyes carried exhaustion, and for once, she didn't bother to hide the cracks in her voice. She leaned forward, her words sharp but soft, admitting she was at her breaking point. That one line didn't just sit in the air, it lingered like smoke, choking everything around them. Across the table, Mendeecees tried to hold on to his usual calm, reaching for his glass as if that small action could keep the storm inside his chest from breaking loose. But the truth was impossible to dodge now. This wasn't about TV drama, not about chores, not about petty things. This was about years of weight pressing down, now spilling into the open where neither could run. What made it sting more was how small the trigger seemed. Yandy reminded him of the moment when even reaching for a glass of water turned into an argument. Two outsiders. It might sound silly, but in that room, it was the symbol of something much deeper. It wasn't about the water. It was about how fragile everything had become, how even the tiniest spark could light a fire between them. She told him she felt like every small thing had become a battle, every detail stretched until it was unbearable. Her voice carried the ache of someone who had been fighting for too long. Mendeecees leaned back, shaking his head, insisting she was exaggerating, that not everything needed to be turned into a war. But his words only widened the gap. The more he defended himself, the more defensive he sounded, and Yandy had no patience left for being dismissed. She told him straight the energy she felt from him lately didn't feel like love. It didn't feel safe. It didn't feel like home. To her, it felt like toughness covering indifference, like she was in the relationship alone while he stood on the sidelines. Every sentence between them became another stone in the wall, rising higher, cutting off what little connection remained. Then her tone shifted, her voice cracked, not with anger this time, but with exhaustion. She confessed that she had been the one carrying their marriage on her shoulders, not just in private, but in public too. She had defended them to friends, shut down whispers from family, and stood tall in front of fans who never stopped speculating. Every room she walked into felt like a trial, with her standing as the only lawyer for a marriage that didn't seem to defend itself. Mendeecees shook his head again, saying the gossip didn't matter to him, that he couldn't control what people said. But that wasn't her point. She wasn't asking him to silence the noise. She was asking him to stand beside her and show her that their love was worth protecting. Online, this moment spread like wildfire. Clips of the exchange reached fans instantly, and one line from Yandy echoed across time. "I can't keep being the only one fighting." That single sentence became a rallying cry for countless people who had given everything to a relationship and still felt empty in return. Social media split down the middle, some praising Yandy for finally speaking her truth, others defending Mendeecees, saying maybe he was just tired of constant conflict. Twitter, Instagram, and blogs turned into battlegrounds, mirroring the same war the couple was fighting face to face. At the table, the tension rose higher. Mendeecees, after a long pause, lowered his guard for just a second. He admitted he didn't want to keep fighting. His apology stumbled out, awkward and unpolished, but it was real. It was a small crack in his wall. For some couples, that might have been enough, but not for Yandy. She needed more than words. She needed proof. She needed action. She needed to see that he was willing to fight for their family, not just talk about it, especially because their children were watching. She told him she wanted their kids to grow up in a home filled with love, not constant shouting and tension. For the first time, her words seemed to land. His expression softened, his eyes shifting as though the reality of what was at stake finally hit him. But pride didn't let him stay there. Instead, he pushed back, claiming he had been fighting from the very beginning, long before she even realized it. That turned the argument into a clash of sacrifices. Who gave more? Who endured more? Who suffered more? It was a cycle with no winner. Only two people stuck in an endless loop of old wounds. Then came the moment that froze everything. Yandy looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Do you think we need space?" The question hit like a thunderclap. The silence that followed was louder than any argument they'd had all day. Mendeecees didn't answer right away, and that hesitation spoke volumes. Yandy leaned back, her face hardening, and said his silence was already an answer. In that instant, something shifted, the flicker of hope between them dimmed dangerously, and the future of their marriage felt like it was hanging by a single thread. The silence didn't end it, it reshaped it. Mendeecees laced his fingers together like a man waiting on a verdict and said he was tired of being cast as the villain before he even spoke. He said that walking into rooms already judged made him brace for impact, and that armor looked like distance to everyone else. Yandy held his eyes and said she wasn't asking for perfection, she was asking for presence. Show up before the crash, not after. She told him, choose our home first and rooms that try to split us. The words landed. You could feel the air change. They went back through the things that cut in quiet ways, the laugh at the wrong joke, the story that should have stayed private, the family argument that spiraled because nobody drew a line. Yandy reminded him how a simple toast had turned into a half-joke about who ran their house and how his laughter stamped it as truth. Mendeecees said sometimes a laugh was not agreement, sometimes it was armor. She answered softly, armor worn too long becomes skin. For a beat, neither of them spoke. Outside noise kept trying to break in. Phones buzzed. A friend posted a clip that got too close. Comments stacked like bricks. Strangers reading tone from seconds of footage and writing essays about a marriage they didn't live in. Yandy rolled her eyes. Nothing stayed private. Mendeecees said they'd learned that long ago, but this wasn't a show anymore. This was a home that needed fixing from the inside out. Something shifted when he finally said it out loud. He had taken her strength for granted. He admitted he didn't always have names for the things that scared him, so he stayed quiet and hoped the storm would pass. Yandy told him she mistook that silence for indifference. He asked her to let him try without grading his first attempts. She asked him to try especially when the results got messy. It wasn't reconciliation. It was the removal of heavy gear, a clearing where a path could start. Even the tender memories hurt. Mornings when he set alarms just to say, call me when you land. Sundays when she put the phone down and let the day be theirs. They both missed it. Yandy said she wanted their kids to grow up in a house where love sounded normal, not rare. Mendeecees said he didn't want doors to learn slamming better than opening. He suggested counseling not as surrender, but as tools. She nodded yes, but only if they brought their real truth into the room, not the version they performed for survival. He said he would, even the parts that embarrassed him, even the habits that looked tough but were only fear in boots. Then she said the quiet thing out loud. When she took off her ring last year, it wasn't rage, it was a test. She wanted to see if he would reach for her hand when the jewelry was gone. He closed his eyes. He had noticed. He just didn't know how to chase without making it worse. She shook her head. Not chasing at all had made it worse. The honesty was sharp, but it didn't draw blood. It cleaned a wound. Puerto Rico hovered like a plane circling the runway. Yandy said she might still go to breathe, not to run. Mendeecees asked what she wanted him to do if she went. She said, start small, the things that aren't small at all. Call the therapist. Move the meeting that always beats dinner. Tell the friend who stirs the pot the kitchen is closed. He said he would. He asked what she would do. She said she'd turn her phone off after 9, stop feeding fears with noise, and write down what she needed from him instead of waiting for him to guess wrong. They both nodded. No speech. No ceremony. Just a quiet agreement that didn't need witnesses. When the bill came, Mendeecees reached first. Not to win a point, just to complete a task without debate. His hand was steady for the first time that day. Yandy looked at him, tired but present, and said she didn't want the public to win. He gave a small laugh without humor. The public only wins if we stop talking in private, she said. Then we won't stop. They stepped out into a city that looked the same. Even though nothing felt the same, the light had shifted, shadows were longer. Their steps matched without trying. They didn't hold hands, but they didn't drift either. On a park bench, they watched kids chase sunlight. Yandy said that simple joy was what she wanted their family to feel. Mendeecees admitted he had learned to survive storms, not relax in sunshine. His love sometimes looked like a shield, sometimes silence. She said she wasn't asking him to be a hero, just a partner who lets her in even when the answers aren't ready. He asked if she truly believed he hadn't been fighting. She said she never doubted his love, she doubted his effort in the places that mattered most to her. Love isn't only survival. It's choosing to build, choosing to grow, choosing to stay even when the ground shakes. He exhaled. He hated feeling graded, like his mistakes lived longer than his wins. Yandy held his hand lightly. I don't want to grade you. I want to grow with you. Dusk slid in. Notifications kept buzzing. They ignored them. They talked about what showing up would actually look like tomorrow morning, not next year. He repeated her words back like a vow: consistency, accountability, home first. She promised to drop her guard, to not assume the worst when he stumbled, to believe effort even when imperfect. The drive home was quiet, but not empty. Yandy said she didn't want their story to become a warning label about fame. Mendeecees said wanting wasn't enough. He had to show it. He promised to book counseling in the morning, to put their house before the noise, to stop treating her strength like an excuse to give less. She promised to say what she needed, instead of letting silence harden. It wasn't magic. It was a blueprint. They pulled into the driveway. The house was still. The kids were asleep. They sat in the car a minute longer. Yandy said she wasn't asking for perfection. She was asking for partnership. Mendeecees took her hand and said he was ready to fight beside her, not against her. For the first time that day, she believed him not because the line was new, but because the look was different. Where they go from here is open, but the storm showed the cracks. And naming the cracks is how repairs begin. Maybe Yandy and Mendeecees rise stronger, maybe they don't. Tonight, they chose not to quit. Sometimes that's the first real win. Sometimes that's the first real win.